Hey, I'm Brett. This is the Family Business Podcast. We're back after a brief hiatus. I just lost an organ. It's fine. I'm fine. You're fine. We're recovering. It's great. We're talking about, am I honest in my marriage? And are we on the same team? This is the Family Business Podcast. Let's jump right in. Hey, welcome back. Feels like welcome back for you. It's been a long time.
It's been a little while.
But we're back. Welcome. And we got friends.
We have wonderful friends.
Wonderful friends right here. Family Business Podcast. We talk about life, marriage, the Bible, how to live it in the context of kids and spouses. Anyways, we've got Matt and Rachel Shuttlesworth, pastors of Legacy Church. I'm going to say in Ontario because they got sites and we could list all the names, but we won't do that. Legacy Church. Love these guys. Great friends for a long time. We all have kids in the same age. I'm missing internal organs. You're missing internal organs. There's all kinds of things. It's fine. True. It's fine. We're fine.
We're good.
My scars are better than your scars in terms of their healing better. Yours is big, mine's small. So it's fine. I have not seen it though. I'm just This is all we don't know. We don't know.
It's all theory.
It's all theory. Yeah. I'm going off of what I've been told. And wow.
Derailed.
Speaking of scars, though, how's your marriage? But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about marriage. Yeah. And you were telling us the other night of an epiphany that you guys had in the midst of kind of one of those marital moments, right? Yeah. That we all have. And in case you think that nobody fights and pastors don't fight with their spouses, there's a reason why we take separate cars to church on a Sunday morning, okay? Like this is how we stay in the flow.
Yeah.
But you had this epiphany moment and it just changed the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about your pain that brought you to prevailing.
For sure.
Yes.
Well, we've been married for 15 years, so we've been through our fair share of fights.
Yeah.
And you can usually time the seasons based on one annual fight that we tend to have every year in some sense. And
same subject matter or something different?
Funnily enough, I feel like the same things cycle through somehow, some way. Like the underbelly of it is the same.
Yeah.
Right?
And so we were having a fight more recently. It was our annual fight. You know, they tend to have, we all tend to have those either one big fights or we have them more frequently, whatever that may be in your context. And we were fighting over something that was really not that important. It wasn't really a big deal, but it turned into a big deal. And I just kind of had this understanding, like, why are you fighting me on this? Why do I feel like I'm in the middle of a boxing ring? I said, we're supposed to be on the same team. We're fighting for the same things. And I think in her mind, she definitely had some understanding of like, oh, yeah.
Well, I think there's two ways to fight. You can fight for the team or you can fight against the team. And I didn't really realize like I was approaching this like I needed to come out the victor of this fight. But when you're fighting for your team, you're fighting for the victory of the whole team, not just the one player. And if you're fighting for your own victory, you're fighting to defeat the other team. And I think the epiphany that I had was like, I didn't realize how much I fight for myself as if I'm on my own team, and him just being like, dude, we're on the same team here. And realizing I need to fight for the team. Yeah. And that looks very different than being in a boxing ring and having an opponent, so to speak, in your spouse, as opposed to a teammate that you're just trying to like work through those different things.
Yeah. Can we workshop this scenario? Yeah. Like, let's pick a random subject, and can you show us maybe what it's like to be against one another, and then what it is to be on the same team? So here's the scenario. Matt loves pizza. You hate pizza. I know that's not true. I know nobody hates pizza, but let's say that's the scenario. And for the future of your family, it's do we eat pizza ever again? Okay. So that's our subject matter. What is it like to be head on against one another?
Well, I think I should share first because I'm really the one who's really good at that.
You said it.
I did. I think that what I notice when I'm fighting against is every statement coming from the other person, I'm trying to correct. Like I'm trying to find what they're saying and I'm trying to make it right because their opinion, their perspective. And what I realized is like the power of just sitting and listening first would be the difference. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything that he's saying, but if I'm constantly on every single little thing, it kind of gives that abrasive feeling that I don't really care what he thinks or how he feels. I'm just trying to get my point across.
Right.
And so in a scenario, if he's trying to explain to me why he loves pizza and every point he makes, I'm combating it with an opposing, like he always makes this joke, like I'm the lawyer. Like he's like, we're not in a courtroom.
You're
not
not
a
many
lawyer.
episodes of Suits.
Just opposing counsel over
No,
here.
I am the closer, okay? But I realized like, no, just like be quiet and listen. And then when I come with like, okay, well, here's my thoughts on it, it changes the dynamic to not feel like it's shot for shot, which is what a lot of fights can feel like, I feel like.
Yeah.
And that was actually some advice that we had gotten through some marriage courses that we had gone through was, you know, I think when we're in those conversations, when we're in those fights, we're in those battles, you're like, as the opponent, so to speak, you're like looking at those little nitpicky things, it's like, that's a jab. Well, I'm going to jab you back 3 times for the one that you give. And what we had learned through that course that we had went through in our church was allow those moments just of silence to listen. Doesn't matter what they're saying and how you could correct it or how you could hit back at it or how you could go back to it. It's like, just listen to the whole thing until they're finished. And then they will allow you to speak. And having that back and forth of having those times where it's like, I'm not trying to jump in and jab you. It's just like, you say what you need to say, and then we'll come to the next person and they can come back at those moments.
Right. I think we realize that there's differences in our personalities. And what's really funny is that Rachel and I are a lot alike, and Matt and Tess are a lot alike. And we kind of had our own epiphany. You probably had it and I just followed along, but I just want to keep I want to deal with it right now, and I want to bring it to a head right now. And I have 7 ways to crush you and claim defeat, and I will not take my foot off the gas until we get there, because that's my personality. I'm competitive. I want to win. Right. You need time to process.
Yeah.
So we had to learn about pressing a pause button.
Yeah. Well, and so part of that is because I'm a highly emotional individual. Like this is just the reality. Yeah. And so I actually, in those moments, can't process through and think about what I need to say because emotion is just overwhelming. So to step back, be able to navigate the emotion of it so that I can then think and process and have a response takes a little longer for me than it does for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I would want to do in a competitive situation is understand that about you and use that to my competitive advantage to gain victory in all circumstances at all costs.
Right.
Because I'm a good person. Or not. And so we have to figure out and so you got permission to press pause, to be like, we got to stop. And I can remember very early on in our marriage, where we were doing like "Don't go to bed angry," classic like soundbite Christianity, where you take a phrase, don't understand it, and you just apply it improperly. And so we were up to like 3 a.m. just fighting, and I was just trying to just achieve victory. And we ended up going to bed angry, and we realized this isn't working, which led us down this path of like, we got to stop. You have a right to kind of call a timeout. I have to abide by that. And I see that as like the most underrated piece of scripture after all the gender roles. Just prior to the gender roles in Ephesians, Paul talks about mutual submission.
That's right.
And that's what we're actually talking about is like, we're mutually submitted to one another, and there's a love and respect there. Okay. You guys have faced some challenges, health challenges, family challenges. As you're walking through these seasons, what are the things that you've been holding on to in the season in your marriage, to kind of move through it because we
Right.
know we're holding on to the Lord.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's a part of the grace of this space.
Yeah.
But what did you learn about one another? What did you learn as you've gone through these moments?
Right. Do you want to start with that one?
Sure. I learned the biggest takeaway from the last season for me is that when you go through difficult things with your spouse, you really see what one another is really made of. And like, you think you know somebody until you watch them get crushed and you see all the juices come out and you're like, oh, and the substance that's in there. And I feel like going through this last season with Matt, I felt like my trust in who God made him to be, like, it just kept growing and growing and growing, because when you see someone continue to submit to the Lord, to the Holy Spirit, continue to stand in faith, even when, there was every reason that he could have kind of given in and given up, and just continuing to desire to do what's right. And like, I felt like, to wrap myself out a bit, I'm like a hard sell on people and things and whatever. I'm very much like, show me, you can talk about yourself, but like, prove it. And I felt like after, being married, the whole thing kind of started around year 13. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm more in now than I ever have been, because I've seen him walk through that fire and stay obedient and stay faithful and stay with the right heart. And I feel like now that mutual, that respect, that trust from my end anyways, like, I'm like, I'll go where you're going. That part of me that was like still maybe questioning and wondering, is he going to do the right thing? Just go through the fire and you see, what's really in people. And I felt like that was the gift of this whole last season, is being able to see that. Yeah. And then leading together becomes easier because I'm more willing to like follow and listen,
Yeah. Well, and I think the interesting thing is she gets to see both sides. There's the pastor side that tends to be on, so to speak. And then there's the human side where every Monday after Sunday, whatever happens, like, I'm ready to give up. You've had some of those calls from me where it's like, hey, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this any longer.
Yeah.
Like,
Especially
it's just Monday.
Yeah, exactly. Every Monday.
It's Monday.
And then Tuesday we sign back up again and we keep going. But to walk through those things, even in that, like, she gets to see all sides, not just the public side. And that's the interesting thing in a marriage, is you get to walk through that together with one another, like the emotions of everything that you're walking through, especially a lot of the things that we've walked through, which could be a whole other 3-hour series. But it's interesting to be able to have someone like that to share with those, to share those moments, to share those feelings, to share those emotions. And I would say, the last 4 years of our lives to 3 years of our lives have been the hardest that we've ever faced, like maritally, in our family, and then in ministry. But I would go back and do it all over again, because we're in the closest place together in our marriage that we've ever been in. And it's because we walked through those hard seasons. It's because we emotionally went through things together and just dealt with a lot of these things in private that people don't see in public. And it brought us closer than we've ever been before. And I'm thankful for that. At year 15, we're the closest that we've ever been in marriage. And I'm so thankful for that.
Wow.
So good. So we started by talking about we're on the same team portion.
Yeah.
So now, having walked through the last number of years and being aware of the necessity of recognizing we're on the same team, which to me just speaks to unity, right?
Yeah.
The necessity of unity. Can you just speak to the value, the necessity of being unified, and how has that impacted your family, your kids? Because coming out of a point of being against to being together, to navigating all of this together as a unified force, how has that been for you, and what has the value been? Because I think that so many families, so many couples go through hard things, and they are on opposite sides, and they find it, and it's so hard to get on the same page, to be unified. But why is that so important?
Yes.
Right.
Well, and that's such a point to bring up, in that I feel like the last 3 and 4 years, suffering and hardship either separates you and makes you grow further apart, or closer together, depending on how you respond to it.
Yeah.
And us realizing, like, and I think a lot of couples, they're on opposite sides because of how they were raised.
Right.
There's voices in our lives. Some of us are aligned with our mother and father, and we're 40 years old and we're fighting our spouse. And it's like, it's really about eliminating a lot of those things from the marriage that are causing the disunity. And if it's voices, if it's influences, if it's maybe getting with a counselor and getting to some of those deeper rooted issues that are causing that disunity, or there's fundamental or philosophical differences in your perspectives and in the way that you're raised and in the way that you do ministry, like, that stuff has to be worked through. Time is not going to fix it. Letting it happen is just not going to fix it. And I feel like because we went under that like extreme heat, it forced all those things to bubble to the surface. Like that refiner's fire. It brought up all of those impurities, and we kind of had to sit down and go, okay, what are we doing with this? Are we gonna let this, we always joke, couples joke and call each other by like their parents' name. He'd be like, okay there, Peter. Okay. And I would say to him, all right, Tim Shuttlesworth. Like, and it's like this sarcastic joking, but like, no, really, there are like things that come up. And what they do is they actually steal your joy. And the beauty of everything that has sort of happened in sort of shutting down and separating from those influences that were literally trying to build walls between us. Like, they do try, and really going to God and being like, no, we are a family unit. Like, your spouse and you and your kids, like, that's the family unit. You leave your mother and father and you're joined. And
leave and cleave, baby.
Like, we quote it, but not a lot of people live it. Like, I've seen it even in pastoring. Like, you see people and they're just like still married to their mother or their father, or the way they were raised or whatever. And so I feel like our kids saw, it's like this lightness just came over our household. This lightness just came over our family. And we're like, wow, this is like what joy feels like. That tension, that thick tension that wants to kind of linger. It just kind of like dissipated. And, for our kids, like, we want them to see that following Christ and being in ministry brings joy. Like, living for Jesus should make you full of joy, not full of, yes, he was a man of sorrows, but like, it was the joy that was set before him that he endured. And I don't think anybody that knew Jesus would quote him as somebody who is miserable all the time. And so I'm talking a lot, but.
Well, I think it's really about intentionality. And although that seems very simple, although that seems like a given, like that's what we're supposed to do in marriage. Intentionality, you actually have to set that time aside to have those honest conversations, to say the hard things that could, trigger the other person in the marriage, to whatever that may be. It's about intentionality. And I think what this last season has forced us to do is to be very intentional with, okay, we understand our parents, we understand how we were raised, but what do we want for our family? What do we want for our marriage? And one of the greatest pieces of advice, because I grew up in a ministry family, so ministry was always, it was always top priority in everything that we do. And I heard Pastor Peter Haas of Substance Church refer to ministry and marriage, because a lot of times we're, as pastors and leaders, we're doing a lot of juggling. you're juggling a lot of things. You're wearing a lot of hats. But he referred to marriage and ministry and family as juggling, because a lot of times we are juggling ministry, we're juggling our careers, we're juggling our relationships, our marital relationship, our family relationship. We're juggling all these things. But the thing that really stuck out to me in this was that he said your marriage, he said your family, and your soul health are all made of glass. You're juggling a lot of things. Not everything's made of the same material. Ministry, your career, whatever it may be, those things are made of rubber. You can drop them and they will bounce back. But it's intentional that you are able to never drop your marriage. That's important. Never drop the relationship and being a mom and a dad to your kids. And make sure your soul is healthy. Because if you drop those things can shatter. And it's a lot harder for those things to come back. And so he said that, and it actually struck a chord with me, because so often we're trying to juggle everything and keep everything up and keep everything afloat. It's like, no, the most important things are your marriage, making sure first and foremost in that family that's healthy, your kids, and then your soul, making sure that's important, that you take care of that. Ministry, all those things, they can bounce back.
Yeah.
Wow.
So good.
So I think we've heard a lot of amazing things here. If I'm to recap what I'm hearing, difficult seasons can be refining moments and seasons, and you actually shape your family culture in the midst of that refining season. Through a refining season, if you're operating out of mutual submission, you'll find that it will bring you together.
Yes.
You know, Paul's prescription for marriage starts with mutual submission to one another in the book of Ephesians. And what I'm hearing is that there's a discovery process that we're actually learning more. Like, you could know everything that you think you know about your spouse at a certain point of the journey, and then there's still so much more. I don't think we're ever going to stop learning if you're open. I think we might get into trouble when we've decided that we know exactly all the things.
Yes.
And so leaning into that and giving yourself permission to be on that journey with one another, because this isn't like I'm going from point A to B. It's like a lifetime.
That's right.
Yeah.
Of a journey. And so for those of us that are maybe going through a difficult season, a hard season, what would you say to somebody? So, I mean, just for context, you went through cancer. There's some like real, like ripping dynamics in like your family, with your parents, and then how that impacted the church.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who's facing some of these mountains, these challenges? They're trying to do it with their spouse. Maybe they feel at wit's end with them. What would you say?
I think for myself, what I got some very good advice from a very dear friend. She's sitting over there. At the very beginning of all of it, and she said, make sure you're keeping your heart soft. I think that was my prayer throughout everything, because when hard stuff happens, we want to become the victim, and we want to be like, what did I do to deserve this? Why is this happening to me? Or we want to blame people. How could you do this? What are you thinking? And all that. And that, Paul talks about, that bitter root can like defile everything in your life. He talks about one bitter person in a church can defile a community. Well, that bitter root in your heart can ruin a marriage. And I felt that advice of like keeping my heart soft before the Lord actually helped me keep my heart soft towards my husband, towards everyone in my life. And that hardness, I think, can kind of creep in, and it might not be directly related to your spouse. It might be related to a hardness before God. It could be related to a hardness, feeling like, everything's just caving in on you. But I felt like keeping your heart soft before the Lord. God, I don't want to be bitter. I don't want this to define me. I need your grace. I feel like that really spilled over into our relationship.
Wow. Come on, this is the Family Business Podcast. This is Matt and Rachel Shuttlesworth from Legacy Church in Ontario.
Yeah.
We love you guys so much. Thanks for pouring into our community. If you're watching this or listening on any other platform, we want to encourage you to also join us on Saints Global. It's super hard to find on the internet. You just go to your browser and type in saints.global. It's an online community based out of our church that is all about discipleship and moving you forward in your relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
So this is the Family Business Podcast. We love you. We love you. We love you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. We promise no organs are coming out. I guess I can't promise that. We'll be back
Lord
sooner than we
Jesus.
were this last time. We love you. Thanks for listening.